Good evening.
Evening.
Hello. How are we, Matt?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Are we well tonight?
Yes, all good. I'll be honest, when I was kind of preparing for tonight, I was thinking, what on earth happened 2 weeks ago? But we're here.
We did a load 2 weeks ago.
You did a load 2 weeks ago.
I've just realised we actually added a workflow in there as well that I've forgotten about. A GitHub Actions workflow.
Yeah, exactly. I think we squeezed that in at the very end, didn't we, actually?
Yeah. That was a fair amount of work last time.
But good fun nonetheless. And I'm sure, no doubt, that fun will carry on tonight as well.
Well, we shall see. I've got to decide what we're going to do next.
Absolutely, indeed. So I guess that is the topic for the evening. And I guess before we jump in, anyone who is watching, drop a comment in the chat and say hello. We always like the interaction. And if you want to put a pull request in as well and have some ideas, obviously you're more than welcome as well.
Yep. Well, more the merrier on this one.
Absolutely. So a bit of a recap then, I guess, where we are and what we've done, because if we think about it, what we've actually achieved so far, we've only done about 3 hours of development work. And first hour and a half, I wouldn't really say we did any development work. It was architecture design, planning the backlog issues, all that kind of stuff. And then last time was very much data model and figuring that bit out.
Yeah.
So now I guess we need to work on the game engine, I think, is the next logical.
Is it worth a quick recap on what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So from the very first episode, we're building a game. We think we're building a game. It might evolve into something completely different by the end of it.
We're hoping we build a game.
We're hoping we're building a game. The intent is to build effectively a management sim, a massively multiplayer management sim, based around the running of an alien bar or tavern.
Space bar.
Nicknamed the Space Bar.
We love a good pun, as you will surely discover if you're tuning in for the first time.
Absolutely. So the last time we were together, we built a set of models to represent the player state. And that then led to a lot of interesting discussions about actually how deep and detailed we go on these models, because they were getting progressively more and more complicated the further in we went.
Indeed.
And now I think the goal for tonight, we ought to start to try and do something with these models.
Yep, indeed. So I think it sounds like we probably need to create another project, I think, because if from memory... Oh no, we did have a world events engine.
We've got a world events engine, yeah. And
yep,
I think that would be a good place to start. So
nice. Okay, so we just got a very simple .NET 6 right line output program CS going on there. Yeah, .NET 6, there we go.
I'll just open that up on mine.
Cool. And I'm thinking, actually, I can see you've got Visual Studio on yours. Maybe it's better to go with Visual Studio with .NET Dev. Just looking at our experiences from last time.
Yeah, I think I love VS Code. And I think this is one of those kind of
personal preference,
universal truths. I love VS Code and I use it. It's almost now exclusively replaced all the stuff that I used to do in Notepad and Notepad++. It is my go-to. I want to
editor.
do something basic. And the C#.NET work is good, but Visual Studio is excellent.
Yeah, indeed. But having said that, all of my web dev, everything I do with static sites and Hugo and whatnot, all of that type of work is always VS Code for me.
I think if you're playing in the Node world or the JavaScript world,
Python,
you cannot be beaten.
Yeah, indeed.
Or if you're doing things like, you and I spend a lot of time doing things like infrastructure as code. If you're doing things like Bicep or Terraform or ARM templates,
Well, earlier today I decided to write an Azure function in Python, of all things. I cannot tell you the last time I wrote any Python, but there we go. Just decided that'd be a fun little experiment, and yeah, did that in VS Code as well.
It absolutely works. But yeah, I think if you've never known Visual Studio, then VS Code is a great place to write .NET.
Absolutely.
But once you've dipped that toe in that water of full fat Visual Studio, it's really hard to go back.
Indeed. So with that, let's do some context switching.
Yep.
And bring yours up. There we go.
Okay. So we have our engine.
We do.
So, this is a minimal template. Oh, love these. So, so how are we going to start? We're going to want to load.
We'll need to bring in the data models, I guess, because we're going to need those regardless. So I guess first.
Yeah, this comes back to our question from last week, doesn't it?
Yes, about dependencies, tying things together, all of these kind of things.
So we can either duplicate them all in this project, or we can go to the player state API that we've got and extract out the player state models from it.
I'm now remembering the conundrums we had from last time.
Yes. Now, the challenge here is that if we're going to go multi-language, we're going to need to duplicate a lot of this stuff anyway.
Yeah, indeed.
Unless we rely on like code generation tools based off the Swagger definition, which might be a way to do it.
Indeed. I'm thinking just for minimum viable products, not going to be the cleanest or, you know, best practice of ways of things that we'd expect, but let's just get something working. Let's just do some duplication for the time being, I think.
Well, you say that. I say let's be slightly even dirtier than that.
You're going to depend on the other project.
Add a project reference to.
Yeah.
I don't do that these days. I'm not even sure I know how to do that.
Add project reference, is it at the top there?
Yeah, but that relies on it being in the same. Oh, you browse for it. There we go.
Yeah.
That's what I'm missing. Let's go and do something even more dirty than that. We might want to add that as a future task to do some extraction around.
I shall put a refactor issue onto the backlog. Refactor implementation of data.
That just feels wrong, but so right.
I fully agree.
So I should now be able to do what did we call it? var player state equals new player state, and then it should prompt me. Right.
Yeah.
We have a player state model,
and I can confirm that we also have an issue there as well in GitHub. I'm saying it very clearly as it is.
It is. It makes me feel unclean just doing that.
Good.
Partly because I know at some point, probably at the end of tonight, we're going to create another pipeline or workflow, and then everything's going to go pear-shaped.
But that's future us problem, okay? We don't need to worry about that right now.
Yeah, no. Future us really hates current us.
Exactly. Oh, good. So we have got a player state, new player state there. Good. So let's kind of step away from the code a second, just think what we want this game engine to actually do here. Think back to the architecture. We had the game engine, which is really just kind of number crunching effectively. So it'll run on a certain cadence, maybe every day.
Yeah.
Takes player input and does something based upon that new input and the current world state.
And that's the thing we're building now, isn't it? That's that project we're in now, isn't it?
Indeed. And I think the key word is state there, right? Is really we're just talking about a big state machine that
Yep.
you're going to have some kind of representation of the world in its current state. You've got an input, you bring those two data sets together, run some calculations, and then you've got your new world state.
Yep.
In its simplest form, that's what we're talking, isn't it? So, in theory, that sounds like we've got some kind of function which is loading current state.
Yep.
And loading maybe a delta of inputs, let's say, since the previous state.
Are you?
It's a good question, are we? Because what I'm thinking of is, in terms of how the game mechanic would work, you'd have maybe once a day, 2 times a day, however many times that a player can interact and make a choice.
Yep.
So those choices would have to be kind of staged in some way because you want to do the crunching all at the same time, was my theory. We could turn that on its head and make it reactive to the player and happen in real time.
Well, I mean, there's almost 2 goes a day, aren't there, at that point? You're almost saying the player will make some choices that impacts their state, which is effectively the UI of the game.
Yep.
And then the world will have events that will also impact that state.
Yes.
So they're almost, you've almost got 2 things competing against that model. Now the tricky bit is whether or not there's a wider state, which was something we talked about last time, for the world. If everything in an instance lives in the same world.
Yeah. Which I think is this. So let's focus solely on the world event happens kind of scenario right now.
Yep.
So we've got some kind of state of the world. Random event happens. It just runs. It doesn't matter on the cadence. We can trigger that externally.
Yeah.
Because then it gives us flexibility to change that over time. So method runs. It causes some kind of event to happen, which impacts the world state.
Yep. So you almost want something. I'm going to go and just quickly drop thinking code.
Good idea.
You almost want something like world event base. And then we'll go public abstract class world event base, and then that has a player state, alter state, player state, public virtual. Is that right? It's been a while since I've done this. Oh, no, hang on. Not like that. Where's me? Why is that not bringing in my types? Is that right? What am I doing? Abstract. Abstract means you have there. That's got a method on it. That need to be abstract as well.
So what's...
So my thinking is that we've got a collection of these classes that correspond to types of event. So it might be something like they're effectively mutators. They're effectively you're effectively saying every day we pick a random one of these events and pass it some random parameters.
Yep.
And the end result of it is you pass in the current state and you get out a final state.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, you're having a mutator, indeed, an alter state. I'm with you.
Right, so that would do that. Why is that not bringing in those? I don't want to make it static.
No, because you want it to be an abstract, don't you, eventually?
Get rid of all that. Object class. Let's go space bar dot player state. But it's because we've got an object called player state that also has a model called player state.
Our naming conventions are coming to bite us.
Yes.
Good. Spare bar.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Models. Right, there we go. Right. Okay. So now I'm happy. So let's do a using
as
space, models equals space bar dot player state dot models. Right.
Good. Now we're cooking. So now can we make that an abstract class, I guess, is the question. Does that
Yes, that's what I want to do.
There we go. Good.
I'll put that one to be virtual, which would mean it doesn't then have an implementation. It does have an implementation. We'll just do that. That would do it. What does it need to be? It's been so long since I've done this.
I know, I'm just thinking this.
Now, if I just make that abstract.
Yeah, you would still have.
Right, that's better.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, it needs to be overridden and implemented in
Indeed, exactly. Good, we got there.
Yeah.
So we've got a alter state.
Yep.
Is that all encompassing? Like, do we need another?
I think what you end up doing then is you then say, let's go and add a new class, and we'll call it something like
economy event.
Let's be let's just I don't know
weather event.
Customer influx world event, which is derived from world event base, which would then have an abstract method there, and then that would then have something that does
a multiplier of the current customer count.
State dot state dot bars dot each. Let's just do something simple. Dot value. Did we
put anything in for customers?
No, we didn't. Well, let's go value times is equal to 1.1.
Value just a string. Is that why it's not?
It won't like that because that's an int, and that's so. Oh, let's just do that. Make it simple.
Cool.
Return. Wouldn't normally do that. You ought to copy it and clone it and do a deep copy on the object and then return it back out again. Let's do that. And that. No, do that. What am I doing now? Oh, let's just leave it like that. So at any point, that event runs, and the value of a particular bar is double, or the first bar is double.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just having a look back through our previous model definitions.
If you're doing it properly, you would go constructor, and then we would have a int value modifier.
And it would be great if that was like a random number between, say, 2 and 10.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that then. Let's do so int value min, int value max.
Yeah.
And then, would you want to serialize? You probably want to serialize these, don't you?
Would you yet, or would you just calculate this within the class? Are you thinking in terms of message passing?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like how you would want to save what's happened in the game. You probably want to persist the snapshot of a point in time.
Oh, so have like an event sourcing kind of.
Yeah, potentially. Like at any point, it would be really cool to be able to replay back a particular day's.
That would be a nice feature, wouldn't it? Being able to look back at your bar over time.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
At which point that creates challenges around the objects that you put on there. But...
Shall we leave that as a future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, because what I'm thinking is I wonder whether or not you want to pass in a min and a max and then have this decide whether or not it should be the random part, or whether you have an external thing that generates a random number that passes into that. Because if you have an external thing that generates the random number and passes it in, then you can persist the state of this particular world event at a particular point in time. If you have this generate the random number, you can't.
Let's go for simplest option for the time being.
So in that case, then I would go public int modifier get set equals 2. And it again gets passed in. So I can get rid of that. We're probably going to want that to be serialize it. We'll make that public to start with. Okay, so that now gives us. So that your program then almost becomes load your player state var world events equals new list of world event base.
Yep. And select a random one and apply it.
And then for each var item in world events, player state equals item dot alter state player state.
So are you thinking that you could have multiple world events happen at once? Is that what you're leaving open there?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
You effectively have a random number of events that happen.
Yep.
And then so you've got effectively load player states, load world events,
yep,
persist player states.
It's almost like an act assert. You know, isn't it? That's what's making me think there.
Oh, we might write tests at some point, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Futurus has already got way too much technical debt.
Yeah, I think the project has more technical debt than it does worth on whatever. There we go. Oh dear. But anyway, this is fine, right? This is again for art of the possible and fun.
So then, effectively, the other half of this then is a UI that allows people to set effectively player events as opposed to world events to define that then changes their state.
Yes.
And then at the end of it, they get the summary of basically these are all the world events that happen. This is your events. This is where you currently stand on the leaderboard.
Yeah, indeed. There's potentially some contention problems between how we implement that player one and this one, in terms of, do you kind of buffer those player changes to all be processed at once, like a bit of a batch job type scenario, or do them live? What happens if a world event runs at the same time, and etc. etc. But
yeah, I mean, I would work on the assumption that people are only going to be allowed a limited number of events per day.
Yeah.
And if they don't make any changes to their state, they don't make any changes to their state. Like no action could quite easily be a...
No action is an action.
Yeah, absolutely. But the world events will happen regardless.
Yeah.
So we just might have a window where we just say, oh no, the world is being updated. You can't have your turn right now.
Yeah.
And when we pick that, I don't know. You pick
change freeze.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sort of, but I mean,
yeah, no, I'm with you.
You're right. There are challenges there, particularly if you're aiming for a global audience, is when you do those.
Exactly what I'm thinking. But anyway, again, cross that bridge. Yeah. MVP. Okay, so then I guess thinking about the implementation of this actual program here, just this page, between line 11 and line 13, there's almost something that needs to happen to decide what world events are going to be added.
Yeah, that is quite that load world events is quite a broad, encompassing thing. So there is a world event picker.
It's like, how many events do you want?
Yeah.
What's the severity of those events?
Yeah.
What are the variety of types of those events?
I know in the first week we actually talked about signposting events that are coming up.
Yep.
So I think there's an element of I almost think that's an API in its own right.
We'll keep it simple. I'm going to keep answering all of these problems right now, and we'll keep it simple. So let's just...
So we're going to end up with a world event repository, aren't we?
It does sound world doesn't it?
I can't spell. Repository. Like that. That'll do.
Yeah.
And then that is going to have a method on it that returns. Should we do IEnumerable, or should we just do a straight list?
Let's keep it nice and do. Okay.
Let's do that, shall we?
Yep.
Generate world events. Okay. Yeah. So that then comes back to, we have a big list of these, like that customer influx world event I've got.
Yeah.
We have a list of those that we can cherry pick from.
Yep.
And then we can generate the parameters that are passed into it as well.
Yep.
And then we can make sure they can be serialized so we can save that snapshot for that day.
Yes.
But keep it simple.
I love how even with the most simple of simple choices, we've still got a ton of complexity there.
But I think this. I mean, this harkens back to a problem that people face every day.
Indeed.
You know, writing software is hard. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the mechanics of actually writing the software.
Yeah.
But the decisions that have to be made that have real world impact.
The architectural choices. Yep.
Absolutely. Actually, like, making those decisions is you know, we've all been there where you get 3 months into a project and realise you've got to refactor 2/3 of it because it no longer fits with your worldview. Or
I
agile,
think
as we
that'll
call
be like episode number 6, won't it?
it. Yes.
At this rate. Good. So then, how would you feel about the events themselves could generate the randomness of their parameters? So it's almost a bit like an actor in that sense, that an event is generated. It itself decides, okay, I'm going to be a multiplier of 4 as part of my initialization sequence.
Yeah. The only challenge I have with that is it comes back to this idea of if you want to be able to save that state, that event state. If the thing itself is generating a random number, you want to be able to recreate it with the non-random result that it got, or with effectively a static value. So if I new up a class, I don't want that to be generating a random number for me.
Yeah.
Because if I save it, when I rehydrate that serialized object, the random number generator will kick in again, and it will generate me a new random number.
So your event log is quite literally the log of the events rather than an event log of the public state.
Yeah.
Of the public state, player state.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay. No, that makes sense. Cool. Let's implement for our single event for the time being then, and then we can kind of extrapolate out from there.
So what we did in here was I actually just I passed the modifier in as a parameter.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm going to change that. Instead of changing the value, I'm going to do plus is equal to, I think, rather than times. Otherwise, you'll get some massive values on there. Oh no, we did put the ledger in, didn't we?
I was just looking actually at the models here.
So that's the inventory. Yeah.
It is funny that we didn't put customers in.
Yeah, I mean, but the customers are not the. I think we've almost got another state model that we haven't implemented. I think we've done is define the model that the users will be able to modify.
But there's an underlying world state of customers.
Yeah, and that will then have a direct impact
on those stats that are the players' bar.
It's in the yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Wow. This is going to get complicated really fast, but that's part of the fun. So. So I'm wondering whether or not we need. I think we almost need to step away a minute and then work out what the events would be.
I'm just also thinking, for the sake of simplicity, is it worth, as part of a bar, just having a customer's value, which is just like an int?
And what would that represent?
Number of customers, because you don't really care about individual customers at the moment.
I don't think you care about the customers generally. I think you care about the value that they bring to that bar.
Yeah.
And the value that they bring to that bar is
how much they consume.
Yeah, so it's reducing the stock that you have of the ledger.
Yeah.
The stock you have in your ledger, because actually we've got popularity on there, and popularity is going to indicate how many people you get coming to your bar.
Yep.
And then
let's try and get something implemented, regardless of whether it's kind of in line with all of the models that we're expecting. Let's just get something which is some kind of world event engine, and then we can start kind of prodding with the model bit then, and how it impacts that a bit later with like the ledgers, etc.
Okay. So let's then. We're going to have a private random.
Yep.
That. And then we are going to. Are we going to have just one returned?
For the time being, I think is sensible.
In that case, then let's do that as an INnumerable. World like that. And then I can do yield, return, new customer influx world event with whatever our modifier is going to be. Underscore random dot next between. Yeah, so if I go between 1 and 5. 1 and 5.
Oh, wow, that was spooky. Same numbers there. Good.
Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. Yeah.
So then our world repository in our program is going to be new world repository. Then we'll get rid of that. And we go in world repo dot generate world events. Like that.
Yep. Agree.
Okay.
So now at this stage, did we initialize the player state?
I've just created an empty one. So it's all going to fail right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we could build a whole load there, so we could. There was a library I used ages ago that generated mock data.
MOQ mock.
Yeah, no, that's more for mocking interfaces for unit testing. It was like an auto. It was almost like auto map. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was really useful.
Was it in C# or was it?
Yeah.
Take a look.
Okay. So new bar. ID equals good.
Faker.net.
That's the one. C#. Was it that one? It's got a lot of downloads. It's probably a good sign.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, that's not a good site to be searching for. Not a top-level domain to be searching for. Faker.net. I'm glad I did that on a different screen.
I have no words. We're not quite broadcasting after 9 p.m.
I'm sure this easily generate fake data. There we go. So I should now be able to go on there and go. No, it's not that one.
It's not that one.
That's useful for generating like individual bits of fake data that correspond with. No, I'll carry on doing what I was doing. I'll remove that in a minute.
Focus is another one.
Wow, we put a whole load of detail into this, didn't we?
Yeah, didn't we? And we somehow missed customers. Love that.
There you go. Faker.name. Whatever.
That's fine, isn't it?
What did we set that to be? Yeah. I'll give that a different value so I wasn't get confused. Everyone starts with a neutral. That's an interesting question. Does everyone start with a 0 popularity or a midway popularity?
I think midway. You know, you're not a dive, you're not brilliant, you're okay.
That was an array of GUIDs, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were each employee, weren't we, as an asset?
Yeah. Did we ever actually define that? We've got an employee. So. Yeah, okay.
Object.
And the last one is ledger. What we can do.
And this is the thing, right? Like, coming back to the Visual Studio Code versus Visual Studio comments earlier.
Yeah.
The amount of autocorrect and IntelliSense that you had there to help you with that class that we've literally both just discussed through this stream here.
Yep. Right, so that then gives me that. So at the end of it then, I should have, if we did a console.writeLine,
That's fair.
I should be able to have a look at player state dot bars 0 dot value.
Yep.
In fact, let's go outgoing value. And we can put the start. Yep. So in theory now I should be able to run that. Yeah. And that should, it's a long-winded way of adding 5 to a value of 20,000.
Uh,
3 to a value of 20,000. There we go.
Good.
Okay, we've written something.
We have adjusted the game state. Success.
Yeah.
Good. But in principle, right, we've now got the basis of adjusting
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we wanted to have like a popularity of a particular inventory item.
Yeah.
So there's a craze going round for this particular drink.
Correct.
We can now search in the inventory items for each player and each bar.
Yep.
And then increase the rate at which they would normally go down.
Yep, exactly. By some kind of multiplier or by a int or whatever it may be, yeah.
Yeah. I'm starting to regret having ints everywhere.
We can change it, we're not too far along.
Well, see, in some cases it makes sense, because, like, but it also means, because you want to be able to vary stuff by percent, don't you? So
you do,
if
but that's okay.
A bar,
we can always just do a rounding after the multiplier.
So.
Like, that's not the end of the world.
So if we change that now, if we change that to a let's create that as a percentage modifier instead,
and then multiply it instead.
So it would be multiply that by would we?
Could you do a round between 0 and 1?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it might not be 0 and 1 in fairness.
Yeah, you'd need to do modifier divided by 100.0 f to get you the percentage modifier plus 1, because you want it to be an increased value.
Do you always want it to increase, though? You don't. I think you...
So actually, you make your modifier...
Exactly.
The value, don't you?
Yeah, just straight up the modifier. Yeah.
So if that was a 1.2 would effectively increase it by 20%.
Exactly. Whereas 0.8 would decrease it by 20%.
Yes. Times by modifier, and then we would need to. I think I've got to do that, haven't I? That would work.
Cool.
So if we now go to my program, my repository, that's going to give me a random number between, and I want next double, don't I? So that should be a double, not a float. Simplicity. Next double. So that returns it between 0 and 1. So what do I need to do there? How do I convert that to a range between?
There's no overlap, are there? There's no overlap.
Yeah, if I've got a value between 0 and 1, I need to turn that into a range of 0 to 2, effectively, don't I?
Yes.
That would allow me to get 100% increase or a 100% decrease, which you almost don't want, actually, but you want.
So just multiply by 2 as a really basic.
That work? So if it's 1, it will go to 2. 0.5, it will go to 1. Yeah, that would probably work, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I know it's rudimentary. But it works.
So, yeah, maths is hard.
It's hard after a long day. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Oh, so there we go. So there we had an outgoing decrease of a fairly significant amount.
Seems like it works.
So actually, if we, well, if we keep running that, we should get different values each time. So there we go.
There we go. Slight decrease.
Awesome. Want to get an increase? Oh, there we go. There's a massive increase there.
See, there we go. Awesome.
There you go. Maths works.
We have proven that.
So then, this is the sort of thing. Like the bulk of the work here is going to become in defining those rules.
Exactly. It's a really glorified rules engine at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's simple, but it's very domain specific, which is kind of what you want.
Yeah, indeed.
And if anyone is watching and they want to submit some additional rules in, then by all means, it's a really good place to start.
Exactly. That could be a fun little way to get people to contribute as new rules and ideas of things we hadn't thought about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the interesting thing with this could be maybe a future thing, I don't know. I'm just going to do some talking out loud, which is always dangerous. For the Customer Influx World event, and any event really, to be fair, we mentioned that we wanted to have like some early indicators that an event is coming. So we could almost, with each event, have some kind of
signpost. Yeah,
exactly. Trigger phrases, example, warning.
And actually, I think that's where being able to serialize the events comes in really handy. Because effectively what you're saying is we're going to generate the events that will be played maybe in 5 days' time.
Yeah, so then we go, okay, here's the event now.
Yep. And then here's your early warning system, your signpost for what may be happening at some point in the future.
And not all events will have early warnings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some won't.
So actually, what you end up with is another thing on here on our base class, which is, I don't know, public abstract enumerable of, let's just do a string to start with, get signposts.
Yep.
And these are the I'm going to put a comment on there. The early warning indicators for an event.
Do we almost want a variable amount of time of how long that early indicator might come as well? Could be 5
yeah,
days,
I mean, you could change that object then to say, I'm thinking simplicity now. And a particular, you probably want a counter that says how many days in the future the event will happen.
Exactly. And then as part of the alter state, it just decrements that.
Yeah.
By.
Yeah.
It's almost a ticks, isn't it, rather than a days.
Almost a what? Sorry.
Ticks, like.
Yeah.
What?
Just a countdown, isn't it? Effectively.
Yep.
So when it gets created, we'll set that with a value, and then actually that no longer becomes so in an ideal world you want that thing to have an implementation now. Which would then return state and then countdown minus.
And I guess somewhere we have to store the state of the countdown.
Yeah, so there's an extra level of complexity coming now, because now we're not only going to be loading, we've effectively got to load all upcoming events every day.
Yeah.
And then only only apply the effect if countdown is 0.
Yeah. I vote we park it for now.
I agree. Let's go back to where we were. That seems complicated.
I'm going to add a backlog item.
I think that's a great idea. Do we want to include the signposts as well for the moment?
No, I think that goes hand in hand with the other piece, doesn't it?
I agree. Right, so we have... Cool. So effectively, we just have this run at a scheduled time every day. Go and get all our player data. What I might just do is abstract just quickly out the player state data into its own player state repository. Return I enumerable of whatever that was. Where did we put that thing? That's the one I wanted. Player state. Nope. Public. Get player state like that. Yield return that object there. And what that means is that when we replace this with something else, just need those. There you go. Format that. Does it look pretty? Why does that not look pretty? Look pretty, damn it.
There we go. That's better.
So then that now becomes player state repo equals new player state repository. And there we go. For each player state in player state repo dot get player states. Like that.
So that will loop through every single individual player and update their state?
Yeah, although we've only got one in there now because it's hard coded.
Yeah.
Right, now that's gonna, yeah. That's where we talk about mutation and cloning and things.
Yeah.
Well, let's just do a new player state. There you go.
Oh, it didn't like that last bit, did it? Oh no, yeah, no.
Why didn't that like that?
Because it's not in the context.
Oh yeah, dope. That to be player state.
There we go.
Should do it. that. That should work. Should probably do some deep copies and things like that on there, but right, just to test, that's still working. We're still modifying the outgoing value.
Good.
Okay, that's a bit cleaner now. So now at some point we'd replace that player state repository with something that goes off and goes and get that data from our API.
Do we need to load up the world events each time
No, probably not.
for each player?
The only reason you might do is because I've generated those as an enumerable.
I'm just thinking of like what will happen now as we start looping this out. And
Yeah, so if we do var world events equals generate world event dot and then the horrible 2 array.
so you just take a copy of that then, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's nicer. Cool.
There we go.
That makes me happier. I was just looking at it thinking, hold on.
So we're not actually persisting player states, but we will put a to do in there as well.
Yeah, cool.
There we go.
Good. So next logical step is to do this for more than one player, I think. And we've proved that we have an event. And we proved it can work for a player.
Yep.
I think the next thing is to bring in a number of players.
Yep. And then I almost think that's something we want to look at probably the next time anyway, which is the idea of creating new players and then persisting them.
Yeah.
So effectively, if we assume right now we're hard coding a player, but we're going to want to have the ability for people to be able to register for a new account, generate a new player, store it somewhere.
Yeah.
And then the API effectively is there to reload that data back out again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then at some point we've got an admin piece as well for creating and defining the world events that can happen.
Yep. Yeah.
I should remember the name of that library that generated fake data, otherwise we'd be able to prove that straight away.
Yeah, I did have a quick glance. I couldn't. There was another one I saw called Bogus. I don't know if that was it.
No, it wasn't. No, not one that I.
Fake It Easy.
No, it was almost. You basically gave it a class and it populated all of the fields on it and then tried to make a best guess at how. It was almost like auto rest or something like that. No, that's the Swagger one. Oh, well, before the next show, I'm going to find that out because that will be a really handy one to use for things like this.
There we go.
You could give it all sorts of. Remember, you could give it all sorts of lambdas to basically say,
Yeah.
how I want you to create these particular types.
Within these parameters, kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If not, we might just have to take a side detour where I create it.
Just thinking we got about 20 minutes.
Yep.
That's again another stream which flies by.
No.
Just thinking realistically, what could we focus on now for the next?
So at the very least, we need to get this committed.
Yep.
It's not really in a state where it's actionable yet, is it really?
Indeed. I was going to say, do we want to clean it up a bit, like with the events on the right-hand side as well, put that in a folder? And...
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So let's go and add a new folder. Events. Just Stick that in there, yes. Stick that one in there, yes. Change the namespaces. Tidy all that up a bit. Yeah, I think there's a definite case for spending at one of these shows, maybe doing the NuGet package for the models.
Yep.
Because it's offending me every time I look at this imported project assembly. That's just right. But actually, it's a good learning thing as well, because it's not very often these days I do NuGet packages, so it would be nice to have a refresher on how we generate .NET packages.
Yep. .NET package, I think, is the...
Yeah, there's a manifest as well, isn't there? There's like a new spec.
The new spec. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, is everything still... Do we want the repository to be part of the events thing, or...
But now it's broken our...
Oh yeah, that's because...
references.
I've got a namespace missing, so there we go.
I'm just trying to think. The repository isn't really an event, is it? But I suppose it's a repository for the event, so you could argue it's...
have a repositories.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Because we have got a couple of repositories seemingly popping up. I'm sure they won't be the last.
Yep. That one, and then that one. And then those are going to become what? Repositories. That's looking a bit cleaner now, isn't it?
Good.
I thought you could do file level namespace declarations in C# now. Because right now that's not in a namespace, is it? That program.js.cs.
Yeah, I thought there was something in there on that.
But you could do that, can't you? File scoped namespaces. We're using C#10, are we? Or are we? Yeah, we must be.
Just trying to digest what is going on the screen there. So you've now scoped that file to the world events engine. So in theory, you wouldn't need the online for that bit. Yeah.
I could just use that, I think.
Yeah.
But now I've broken all sorts of things now. What have I broken now?
But is that just a... It almost looks like it's broken the syntax.
Yeah.
Of the file.
But according to this, that should be supported. But are we using C#10? I never know. Yes, we must be.
The semicolon.
I wonder if it doesn't like it with the other...
With the fact there's no class.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Well, let's go then. Let's try that. Let's go click static class program public static void name. That code there. Drop that into there, and then everyone's happy.
There we go.
How bizarre.
Guess it makes sense though, because...
Oh dear, that was a bad one, that was. They lost a lot of value on.
But it proves that the engine is working,
We're
which
getting
is
the
good.
range there. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, imagining players investing tons of time into this game where they built up their bar, and something like that just comes along and
Wipes them out
destroys them.
completely. Yeah. Yeah. We
Dear.
might want to set some upper and lower bounds on some of those.
Yes, I think as part of our testing, and this is actually a genuine comment and maybe a GitHub issue to be added, almost I wouldn't call it unit testing, I wouldn't quite call it integration testing, but almost like a game functionality testing of different values and checking what would happen in various scenarios, and simulation testing almost.
Yeah. I mean, it's play testing, isn't it? At some point.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to commit that now.
Cool.
I'm thinking about the what we were talking about earlier with the new spec files and creating the NuGet. The repo itself will have packages on there, won't it? So we can
Correct.
Use that for storage. So. Added first pass at World Engine. We'll even add a solution file on there as well.
Just while you're doing that, just for anyone who's watching, just in terms of GitHub packages built into any repository that you go and spin up. There will be a cost for private repositories though. So you can see here private repositories and the various costs, etc. For public, it's free because obviously GitHub loves open source. So purposes of this will be great.
You've got a capacity limit though, haven't you, from memory?
I think there is, isn't there?
Yeah, oh no. I know I've hit it recently with some of mine because I've been doing some testing, and I get these emails that tell me
yours was private though, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it might have been. Yeah, I suppose public would make sense. I'm assuming we didn't kick off a build then.
Let's see.
And if we did, we probably need to change it so we don't. No, we didn't. That looks fit.
There you go.
Because it's scoped to that folder.
But I think that package storage is still private. Well, that's something we can check for next time anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I was doing a lot of testing with something that was generating packages and generating artifacts actually from actions. And it all contributes towards your storage space. And then you get snotty emails that say, you've got 95% storage used. This will reset in 90 days. Great.
Yeah, because it's this line that keeps popping up that packages are free for public repositories that has me wondering. But I'll double check on that in the background anyway.
Right, so that code should now be there.
Let me jump back on then. Cloud with Chris. ToolUp Tuesday. Updated 15 seconds ago. There we go. And we have a build kicking off.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't have that one kicking off.
No, we shouldn't, should we?
Do we go and do a very quick...
I can do it. Go on, I'll do it from...
Go on, you're not going to write some code, are you, Chris? Blimey.
I know. Right, let's just go and edit this. And from memory...
I've been using the github.dev a lot today, and it's great as a way of editing these.
It is... depending on the scenario that you're doing. So I was using it for a hack recently, and it involved quite a series of not complex, but let's say changes that would have benefited from some kind of IntelliSense.
Yeah.
It didn't fare so well there. Something that could have been a simple change ended up being about 10 to 15 different changes, with a few of us trying to triage what was going wrong.
Okay.
So if it's a simple edit or something like that, 100% agree.
Yeah, I suppose it's really handy if you're doing like multi-file edits you want to do in the browser, because a lot of this interface that you're on now it's reliant on the fact you're doing a single file, so you're going to get a single commit, which in theory is going to kick off a single set of builds per file. But if you need to touch multiple files in a single commit,
yeah, indeed. I can't remember my path here. So spacebar. Okay. So yeah, looks good. And of course, we should commit directly to main normally, but for now, we will. Right.
Yeah.
So, good. There was no change. If I just do a dummy change to something in here for the time being. Go to our actions. Just refresh that. There we go. Good. It's fixed. I guess we could add another action for the world events engine as well.
No.
Oh no, we can't. Yes, you're right. Yeah.
No, we
Good
can't
point.
do that.
Good point. Okay, fair point.
Well,
I won't get ahead of myself.
It would work, but you'd have to build the other one first.
Correct. So you'd be building the overall. Did we put a solution in? No, we didn't. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you'd have to build two separate projects as is, and then no. Okay, we'll leave that for next time. Packages.
I mean, there's an argument that they should probably, if you're going to go down the route of putting them into NuGet packages anyway, or .NET packages, you're almost heading towards the individual repos rather than the mono repo.
You are. I think for the purposes of what we're doing here, though, we can keep it to one repo. But in general, yeah, you probably would be looking at more than one. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. But it's good. I mean, we're now at a stage where we've got some kind of world events engine. Something is processing.
Yep.
I'm just trying to think what would be the most sensible for us next time.
I think the next nice step would be to have some kind of way of a player of interacting with their world.
Indeed, it does point towards the player API as the next step, doesn't it?
There's almost a stage where we do. Let's have the players being able to create create and modify their state.
Yep.
Then the stage after that is then tying it all together so you've got a simple flow. So effectively, you can do 1 day's play where they make a change, that change state gets saved, the world engine runs at a fixed time or on demand in our case, I would guess. That then changes the state that then replays that, presents that back to the player. If we can do that stage, just that as a single day's worth of changes.
Yeah.
The rest is then whittling and fine tuning. So.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just thinking through. There's a few dependencies on there for this next bit, actually. Quite a lot of the debt we've been pushing back, I think, is suddenly coming to bite us.
Yep.
particularly around the packages, how we deal with those, sharing them across the different platforms. Sorry, languages, I mean frameworks. A player versus a bar and what that means.
Yeah. There's a UI decision, even if we just keep it as a console app to start with.
Keep it as a console app to begin with. Simplicity. Or even just Postman or HTTP or something like that, like you did with VS Code. Just API based for the time being, purely. I think there's also, I'm just trying to pull what's in my brain here, but there's almost, this player decision isn't going to be something arbitrary that you, or is it? In fact, I think I'm asking a question here. The player decisions that can be made, we're allowing a certain number of changes per day. Are those changes completely arbitrary? So you could go ahead and stock up on something, or are they in a controlled, right, this is the scenario?
I'm almost wondering whether or not we do the inverse of what we've just done. In that actually we define a fixed set of player events that they can choose from. And then we effectively replay the same thing. It's exactly the same pattern for the players then.
It is, isn't it? It's just one is automatic, whereas the other is
an elective. So basically, if you work on the assumption that there's a cost associated with a player event, it's almost an action points from or kind of turn-based adventure games. It's like you have 5 action points to spend today. This action will cost you X.
Yeah, exactly. It costs you this much in your inventory. It costs you this much in terms of staff morale. It costs you, I
mean, even if you just keep it abstract and just say action points.
Yeah.
And just say, restocking this particular thing will cost you 1 action point per 100 units that you buy in it.
But I was thinking we could even start action points. I like the idea of you're allowed a certain. That could actually be interesting. You choose this one.
Yeah.
Oh, see, now coming back to that point that we mentioned earlier about inaction is an action. What if you saved your action points?
Yeah.
And then
are you allowed to for a start? Yeah.
Well, let's assume you can.
Yeah.
And weight different answers to a different cost.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to invest in the great new business adventure that's coming up, that's fine, but you need to have 3 action points. Oh, you've only got 1? Sorry.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, what I was thinking though was almost action points are like the almost game mechanic of you're allowed to do this action, but they still have to have like an in-game cost of like you want to buy all of those beers or whatever it is, then you need to have your 10 credits or whatever it is.
But I mean, they're consequences of the action.
That's fair. I'm with you. Yeah, it's an in-game.
So you're applying. You're using doing the state. So buying inventory is effectively a modification of your value by reducing the value of effectively the cash flow you've got.
True.
But increasing the at the same time.
Yes, I'd say that until there's a stage where an action could be blocked by the modifier not going through properly. So, for example, that beer costs me 10 credits. I've only got 5 credits. I shouldn't be allowed to do that.
No, I agree.
So, yes, in principle, I agree, but there's certain differences between how we've coded the player state.
I am almost certain there are bits of minutiae there that
future
going to hate.
Bits? Only bits?
I think there's an entire episode of this show which is future us just coming in and just slapping us.
I agree. I think there should be an episode of us looking back over the old episodes and going, "Oh, geez, what on earth was that?"
I hate that guy.
Oh, good. But no, this has been fun. This has been good.
Again, going by again, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it doesn't feel like it was half an hour ago where I said, "Oh, we've got half an hour to go," but there we go.
Yep.
But no, good progress again. I think it's going to be interesting next time because I'll bring it back up again. That player decisions API is not .NET.
Yeah.
So that's again past us looking and going, why did past us say that? Well, we did. Here we are.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we'll stick with it up until the point where we get frustrated with it, and then we'll do it.
And then we'll go to something where we're like, oh, I'm just going to switch to this.
Yeah.
But no, there'll be examples and we'll be looking through things, I'm sure. So
yeah.
Good. Well, there we go. Well, Matt, thank you as always.
Pleasure.
And
a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And same time in 2 weeks, I think.
Okay. Look forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, folks, if you've been tuned in, thank you for staying with us on this one. And you know your call to action. If you want to get involved, put in a pull request on the repo. And again, I'll bring that up on screen here just one more time. Cloud with Chris, ToolUp Tuesday. Go ahead, put in a pull request. We'd love to see what events that you could contribute into the game. So until next time, folks, see you then.